Welcome back to part 2 here. Let's go ahead and continue here. When you are working with, come on, move forward. When you're working with data flow, so you're moving from source to destination, two of the common scenarios that you will undoubtedly run into is a type conversion error. And this is going to happen when the source is picked up as a decimal, but your destination is an integer. Okay, so we're going to have a conversion error. SSIS sort of operates from the mindset of we will not perform any type conversion for you. You must perform the type conversion. It's a very robotic, very robust way of handling it. It basically puts you in the driver's seat and says, okay, we'll convert the data, but you had to tell me to convert the data. I won't convert it implicitly. So think of SSIS's data conversion rules as being explicit conversion, as opposed to what we see in the Transact SQL language. Very often we see implicit conversion. So SSIS is going to be more like a language like a Java, a C++, a C Sharp, in that it will not often perform the implicit data type conversions. It requires you to do a more explicit conversion. Okay? So we're going to have to talk about dealing with type conversions, but we also have the concept of truncation. This is where you have a source that's larger than the destination. So to be able to actually troubleshoot these requires a good understanding of the SSIS data types. And when your package, when you are in development mode of the package, it will do validation. So every time that you make a change to your data flow, it's going to try to validate that. So you change the data type of a column, okay, SSIS going straight to the source or the destination, whichever it may be. And it's going to validate whether that data type actually matches up with the metadata of that field / column. And if it doesn't validate, you're going to either get a warning or an error. And an error prevents you from executing the package. A warning does not, but it's just warning you something may happen. Now, when we get into a little bit later, I'm going to show you how you can delay validation so that the validation is not done during the design, but it's not even done at the start of the package. It is done when the package actually begins executing that particular step. And we can even tell SSIS, don't even bother about validating that external metadata. So we're going to see that a little bit later in the course. First off, though, let's look at the data types. Now, we've got the same categories of data types in SSIS that any source destination database has, right? Numbers, strings, etc. So nothing new here. The only thing that is unusual is that all the data types are in uppercase and they all begin with DT underscore, DTI4, DTSTR. Now, you are not going to be asked to memorize every one of them. There really aren't that many. I bet there's like 24. I have no idea. The key thing is to know the ones that you have to use often. So know the biggies. Know where to go to find more info. Now, where I go when I want to find out information about the SSIS data types, I go straight to Books Online. And the link to Books Online was way too long to fit on a PowerPoint, so I just shortened the URL that you see here. That will give you the link to the full list of the SSIS data types there. Now, the important ones, so I've said in the previous screen, you only have to know the biggies. What are those, though? What's important for you on this project, in this package, with this company, may not be important if you change companies 2 years from now or next week, or you move to a new project within the same company. You may find that you're using this small group of 4 to 5 SSIS data types in your conversions, but when you move to this other company, you're using 16 different ones. So it's kind of hard to say, here's the most common ones. I'll do that at the end, but inevitably I'm going to miss some, and some of you are going to look at it and go, well, why didn't he talk about this data type? I use that one all the time. Okay, you might. Some of the other data type groups, you can kind of classify them like numbers, dates, etc. Um, tend to be kind of large in relation to the other groups. So it can kind of get confusing, particularly with the date data types, to know or to remember which each one of them does. So, make sure you know the ones that you have to use cold. You want to know those cold, and you just want to know where to go read up for more information. Now, the easiest way I find to learn about this is to map them to a language like .NET, the managed types, or SQL Server, or Oracle, or Jet. Because if I'm looking at an Excel spreadsheet and I'm looking at a date data type there, well, gosh, I need to be able to map in my brain what the correct SSIS type should be. So to do that, we'll bring us in the wizard here. The wizard is probably not something you thought you would see at this point. It's the old import export wizard. And so the import export wizard is really handy here. Not because you're going to launch it. You don't even have to launch it to get the use out of it. But it uses a set of what are called XML mapping files. Okay, so these mapping files directly map a short data type to a DTI1, for example. So you can actually go down. I'll show you these mapping files. You can see right here is the path. So if you have SSIS installed on your machine, you can stop the video and you can go take a look at these. They're just XML files. Open them with a notepad, Visual Studio, whatever your tool of choice is there. They're very simple to understand as well. I've got a screenshot on the right side of what it looks like. That's just a partial list. You can see, let me zoom in over here. You can see certain patterns. So let me choose here. So we're going JET 2. So these are the built-in conversions here. If we have a JET database like a Microsoft Access or an Excel database that we're a spreadsheet that we're working with, and we want to go to SQL Server, this is what the wizard uses to port those data types, to map the JET data type to the MSSQL 9. Okay, now MSSQL 9 is 2005. Okay, MSSQL 10, you'll see that down here as well. So you see SQL 10, and maybe I kind of mess it up, but you can see SQL 10 right there. We're mapping in that one SQL 10 data types to SQL 9, so mapping the 2008 to 2005. So the wizard has all this mapping file, and you can load them up, and they will specifically say that a DateTime data type in SQL Server matches like looking at this one here. Let's here. Oops, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that there. So we want to go to SSIS. You see right there how it says to SSIS. So the SQL client right there, mapping the SQL client, the SQL native client to SSIS. Or down here at the very bottom, here we're going MSSQL to SSIS. We would actually be able to see in that one that it says date time matches to DB timestamp. So DT underscore DB timestamp. That's exactly what it would say. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through finding the mapping files, showing you what's in them, showing you how you can change them if something doesn't work in the wizard. Right? So it's good to know about these XML mapping because that keeps me from having to go to the books online too much, which isn't a problem. Right? So I just suggest to you that if you're not clear, go look at those mapping files. There's some great information, but just to me, it's often easier to map it directly in my brain using these mapping files than it is to look in books online and see a description like 1 byte signed integer. Because that'll be the description. If we go take a look at the DTI1 data type, that's all it's going to say. It's going to say 1 byte signed integer. And then I got to think to myself, okay, well, in SQL Server, that's a tiny int, is that right? Oh gosh. And then in Excel, is that a short? And so I got to think about all of that. But if I just use those mapping files, there's no thought process at all. I just take a look at it, I know exactly what to do. Now, towards the end of this particular video, I have a couple of tables, and I'm just going to cycle through them. You can see I've picked out a couple of the more common data types: numerics, strings, the date time. I'm going to take a look at a couple of them here, but really I've got this. It's attached as a PDF with this video in the zip file. This is really for you to load it up and look at these. Where you see this RX, right here, you see this X, and I'm not sure it comes across that well, but it's italicized, meaning that there's going to be a number placed there. So it shows you here that R4 goes right there. So really that would be DT underscore R4. So there is, I tried to delineate it by changing the font. So there's DTR4 versus DTR8 for that floating point. Here, there's DTI1, DTI2, I4, and I8. The numbers represent the number of bytes. You obviously need to know the difference between, and I mean, who doesn't, but a signed integer versus an unsigned, an unsigned integer, right? So those are pretty simple maps, I think. The common strings, what you probably are going to work with more than anything is dealing with Unicode conversion. So you see that term Unicode here. So anytime SQL Server is reading data from a text file, it's going to, integration services, it's going to pick it up as a Unicode character string, and it's going to make it this DT wide string. That's what the W stands for. W means wide string. Okay, Unicode is the double byte string. So you can see, in case you're not familiar with Unicode, you can see that the DT string, the single byte string, is twice as much as the double byte string. So let's see. I don't want to get into the details, but I'll give you this. This means 1 byte of storage per character. And then down here, same thing. This is, I said it was the double byte, so it's 2 bytes per character. Okay. That's the difference between string and wide string. Now, it's a weird thing to me down here. You see how we get into the text data types down here. These are the same data types except for we've got the single byte versus double byte. But how come it's not a W text? Because it's a wide text. Why isn't it W text? I don't know. Strange dichotomy there. I have no clue. So let's take a look at the date time ones. These are the confusing ones. There are way more date slash time related data types. And I chose these because they're the most, they are for me, the common ones that I use. You might be different. You might be using a lot more of the new SQL Server 2005/2008 types. I don't know. But just notice here that you do have both a separate date and a time, okay? And that the date has a scale of fractional seconds of 7 digits. Okay, that's going to be important because that won't map to just your plain old date time. Okay, the date time only has 3 fractional digits. Okay, so that's the little things that you have to know. And so for the date time data type down here in the SQL Server, just to use SQL Server, we're going to be using that DB timestamp quite often, as opposed to what you might actually have thought the DT date. So I would suggest that you do spend a little time, because notice this one doesn't start with DB. Right? These are a little confusing, I think, in the naming. It just takes a little working with them to get comfortable with them. So you have this as a chart. You can use this. You can print it out. In the next video, let me take you through those mapping files. Let me show you what it looks like. It'll be like a 5-minute video because these are easy. It's just all about A, finding them, B, understanding how to actually read them.